The Scripps National Investigative Team is exposing convicted military rapists flying under the radar when they return to civilian life.
And the team found a major case with a San Diego connection. Investigative correspondent Mark Greenblatt uncovers what a California congresswoman calls a gaping loophole.
My blood turned absolutely cold.
This Wisconsin mother remains haunted by the crimes of this man, Matthew S. Carr.
I've never felt such danger, such helplessness as a mom.
Posing as a gynecologist assistant in the Air Force, Carr met her daughter on the internet in 2010. A mother's intuition led her to check for sex offenses online.
And what did you find?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
But turns out Carr was hiding a heinous secret. In 2003, the Air Force kicked Carr out for the indecent assault of 7 women. He was sentenced to 7 years. He spent time in a San Diego military prison after conning them into fake exams, using his fingers and medical instruments to probe their private places.
It was devastating.
She later found out he was doing the same to her daughter. Carr is now in a Wisconsin psychiatric facility for violent sex offenders.
Had he been registered as a sex offender, you would have found that out before he ever moved out here.
Yes, it didn't have to happen the way it did.
But in an unprecedented review of military sex offenders, the Scripps National Investigative Team reviewed over 1,300 cases, running the names of convicted sex offenders through registries across all 50 states. We found 242 not publicly registered. That's about 1 in 5 off the radar, able to disappear into communities across the nation. Remember Matt Carr?
We could have stopped all that from happening.
Police in Wisconsin point to a breakdown in New York, where Carr was first discharged. There, the military's indecent assault only amounts to a misdemeanor, no matter how many victims or the seriousness of the crime. Carr was not required to register, allowing him to move undetected to Wisconsin.
And now he's re-victimized people outside in the civilian world when he didn't need to.
And in neighborhoods across America, we found families put at risk, with states failing to match up military crimes to their civilian equivalents. And with all 50 states having different rules for registration, can sometimes lead to mass confusion. Derek Costin got kicked out of the Marines and sentenced to 5 years after having 3 12-year-old babysitters walk on his nude body, rubbing their feet against his genitals. Today, Costin lists his address here, just 15 doors down from a school. But Arizona officials say his military conviction for conduct unbecoming an officer is not a registerable offense here. Then there's Curtis Austin, sentenced to 6 years in the brig after he brandished a knife, threatened to cut his victim's throat if she screamed while he sexually assaulted her. Air Force officials tell Scripps he is actually registered in California, but doesn't appear on the state's public website. State officials confirm the existence of a non-public registry for offenses that don't match their laws.
This has to be fixed. This is a gaping loophole.
We shared our findings with Congresswoman Jackie Speier of the House Armed Services Committee.
It's a damnation of the military justice system, and it's a damnation of the military in their responsibility in protecting civil society, because in fact they are not.
The Pentagon declined an on-camera interview, but a senior defense official says if Congress required it, the DoD could register an offender initially, but the onus would remain on offenders to re-register as they move from state to state. And he concluded it would have no practical effect upon the problem. But that mom from Wisconsin is not convinced.
I would ask him if he has a daughter and how he would feel if this had happened to his own daughter.
Congresswoman Jackie Speier calls the Pentagon stance outrageous and says she plans to introduce legislation that would require the Department of Defense to create its own sex offender registry, and she's also asking the DoD's Inspector General to investigate. On Capitol Hill, I'm Mark Greenblatt for the Scripps National Bureau.